So, a few months ago, Hillary Clinton came out with her book, Hard Choices, about her time in the State Department. And during a certain interview, I can't recall which interview it was, uh, it came out that Hillary Clinton said her and President Clinton were broke after they left the White House, which obviously was absurd uh, to anyone who understands the type of net worth that you come out of the White House with, not not only in assets but just the money that's attached to your name, what you're able to do as an ex-president or an ex-first lady to make money. It's really a great asset to have that office, that White House attached to your last name. And it started coming out that Hillary was making big bucks doing speeches. 200K, $300,000 making speeches to universities and other private speeches. And it was an interesting sort of dynamic to see the left not know what to do when someone's making, and this isn't my term because I don't think there's such a thing, but to see the left not know what to do when one of their golden children, Hillary Clinton, is making quote obscene profits. It really was interesting. There was sort of an attack on her. Those college students from um, was it UCLA? I forget which university it was, but there was a university who she was speaking at, and she's making, I believe it was well over $200,000 just for a speech, and she had all kinds of other ridiculous terms. But it was interesting to see the students. Almost certainly that student body is majorly left-leaning. It was interesting to see them sort of come out and speak against Clinton and say that she shouldn't be making that much money for the hour speech or whatever that it was. And it's sort of astounding. What's always been astounding to me is that people think they're owed something from the government. People think that because they're born American, they're owed a good life. The government's supposed to provide them with a quality life, and that's not the purpose of government at all. That's never been the intended purpose of government. The intended purpose of the United States government is to protect you and protect your right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The pursuit of happiness, which they're not supposed to pay you. You don't get paid because you're an American. Well, you do. These days you do, but you're not. That wasn't the intention. People seem to think that they're guaranteed to happiness, not the pursuit of happiness. There's a significant difference. So what was astonishing to me was, the sort of attack, and it wasn't full force. Good Lord, if Mitt Romney was making $300,000 a speech, then you would have seen some attacks. But there were a few honest leftists who were honest to their philosophy who did come out and criticize her. And I appreciate that consistency in their philosophy, the ones who did criticize her. But the thing that I've always said, and what I maintain, is Hillary Clinton has every right to make that amount of money. She was the first lady. There's a certain worth that's associated with that, and she's making the most of what she can get on the private market. She's not a public figure anymore. She should be able to go out and make as much money as she wants to. And the people who criticize that and say she's making, again, not my word, obscene profits, I don't understand the mentality. There's something to be said for the fact that, I forget the exact figures, but it's, the whole Occupy Wall Street thing. 1% of individuals in the United States own 20% of the wealth. I believe that's the statistic. I'm not entirely sure. I don't really care. Because there's nothing, you can't legislate that away. You can, but it won't work. You can't legislate economic success. So the reason 1% of individuals in this country make 20% of the wealth. It's because that 1% for the most part, worked harder than you. They created something. They innovated something. You didn't build that. Well, guess what, Mr. President? Yes, they did. They busted their ass and went to work and built something. They provided something, a service or something that was desired that nobody else could provide. And that's truly, I mean, that's the most moral system. That's why capitalism won. It's the private market is the only moral economic system there is. There's nothing more moral than I provide you a service and you provide me one back. You know, if my service is worthwhile to you, then I do well. And something that I've always said during this argument is, even though there's something to be said for that, that 20% of the wealth does go to 1% of the individuals, there's nothing that could be changed in a heartbeat. If the people making less income became more innovative, worked harder, it's not to say people don't work hard, you know, at McDonald's. But you can't go to work at McDonald's every day, and even if you bust your ass, I mean, there's no innovation there. Just because you work hard, and I'm a huge proponent of working hard. I think it pays off in ways that people don't even understand. But just because you work hard doesn't mean it's going to necessarily turn into wealth. There has to be some sort of innovation. You have to provide something that others have not provided. That's life. That's the way the world has worked forever, with the exception of communism and socialism, and we obviously know how well that has worked out. Capitalism is the only economic system that works. It's proven by history, and anyone who says otherwise, I'm sorry. I mean, I studied history. They're just foolishly inaccurate. Hillary Clinton being able to make $300,000 per speech has nothing to do with why I can't make $300,000 per speech. It's that simple. That is why I describe myself as a capitalist. And, you know, I'm a libertarian-leaning Republican in realistic terms, but I describe myself as a capitalist because I think the assault on capitalism, and, you know, if you ask most of the people from my generation, are you socialist? They'll say yes, and they don't even understand what that means. I mean, most people don't understand that what socialism means is the government owns. I mean, socialism basically means there's no private market. The government owns everything. The government has control of everything, and that's just not. It's not a practical or moral way to run an economic system. It's. I mean, it really isn't. So when people get on Hillary Clinton or anyone about making obscene profits, I just roll my eyes. There's no reason you can't go out there and innovate something, work hard, work your ass off at something that somebody else hasn't provided. Yes, you're going to have to work. You're going to have to think. It's hard to come up with something like that. I mean, I certainly have not been a major success in my life, but, you know, even working nighttime security, making $8 an hour, I realized it's on me to make something better of myself. It's not on the government. And you know what? If I'm not there, if I'm not intelligent enough to provide something that others can't provide, to make that wealth come to me, then I don't deserve it. I deserve to have a decent life, and I do have a decent life. At $8 an hour, I can live well at $8 an hour. I mean, that's not a problem. The problem is the majority of the population thinks of living well as something other than what it is. The majority of the population thinks living well means driving a $60,000 car, having, a 2,000 square foot house, and having the job. And that's not what living well is. We've perverted our values and, you know, what it means to live well to such astronomical borders that it's laughable. I mean, these people who are working at the Targets and the Walmarts and not trying to better themselves in any way, and just thinking, well, somebody needs to provide for me, the company needs to provide for me, the government needs to provide for me, somebody else needs to provide for me, the 1% needs to provide for me. I mean, shut the up. I mean, at a certain point, you have to take responsibility for yourself, and that's what we're seeing, particularly in my generation. And I know my generation, they're sort of, it's an interesting generation in the fact that, from what I understand, those who are getting good jobs are just killing, they're just slaughtering. I mean, they're doing wonderful in the professional world. But it's sort of like when I talked about my high school, I said, there were the people who were struggling, there were people doing great, and there weren't many people in between. And that's sort of, as a culture, what we've become. There are people who are going out there realizing that they need to fend for themselves, and they're kicking ass. And then there are people who are thinking, well, we need to be taken care of. And I guess that's something that I'm so adamantly against, is the fact that there are individuals in this country who actually think because they were born in America that the government owes them happiness. And that's not the case. The government doesn't owe you happiness. The government owes you the right to pursue happiness.